Ah, from New York, New York, you are listening to Extra Time Club and Country, driven by Continental Tire. From Kansas City, I am Andrew Reeby with my partners in international soccer, David Goss and Charlie Davies. It's extra time for all of you. You know that little +4, whatever goes on the board after the games? You got like +90 here. You're getting an entire extra game. We're
PK
doing this
shootout.
every single month. PK shootout, you feel like it's that? I mean, I don't
Well,
think
it's
this is
international,
definitive.
and international tournaments are what goes to shootouts normally, right? So it's like kind of the only time you really see it.
So you're saying the pressure's really on. Like, there's no chance to make up for missed points or biff takes. Like, you've got to hit these things dead on. So be prepared for that, Charlie, because your number 9 depth chart for the U.S. men's national team is coming up. From a former forward to the current forwards, how does he see it all stand? We're going to talk to Taylor Rockwell of Total Soccer Show about who's having the best season in Europe among Americans abroad. Now, we recorded that last week, so sorry, Zach Steffen. Your Carabao Cup victory, your start, your trophy lift, it didn't get accounted for in that conversation. So we'll see how maybe that might have changed things. We'll also talk Christian Pulisic. We have Richie Laryea, an interview with the Canadian national team star and Toronto FC star. And, you know, every time I hear Richie Larya's name now, I just hear come to Besiktas. That's just the way it works for me. Atiba Hutchinson maybe doing some recruiting. We'll see about that. And Dave's got his best 11 for Canada as he sees it now, and maybe as John Herdman might see it as well. Guys, this is our second club in country. How do you feel about it? Charlie, I know you're deep in this. We're glad to have you, man. Where's your jersey, though? I thought this was going to be your opportunity to get your signed jersey up, just to show the people, give your bona fides, make sure they know, hey, I played for the national team. Have you heard of Azteca?
Yeah,
I might have scored there.
This whole room is really a special room for me, just because I can see all of those special moments for me, the memorabilia, the goals, jerseys, pictures. So
we're gonna have to start auctioning off the shrine to Charlie Davies.
There's nobody that loves the national team more than I do. I pay attention to every game. I feel so attached to it. I'm a huge supporter. And once you go through, it's a brotherhood. Once you go through it and you put on the jersey, it's like it's impossible not to want to root them on and be a part of the process.
You have your jersey, of course. I have a Michael Bradley jersey. That's the only U.S. national team jersey I ever purchased. That's it. My favorite player. Who do you have that's not your jersey? Like, do you guys swap in the locker room? Do you have a collection back in the closet where you're like, hey, I have got a Confederations Cup Landon Donovan that you wish you could get your hands on? What do you have sitting back stored in boxes that you don't tell people about?
It's funny. Typically you're not trading jerseys with your own teammates on the national team, but when I was coming up, my first Copa America, actually, in 2007, I got to get a jersey from Eddie Johnson. And Eddie Johnson was one of the strikers I looked up to, and he was rocking the 9 at the time. So he signed a jersey for me and to my little bro. And I was, super excited because, I had always watching him play. I was like, man, we would form an unbelievable partnership. I always thought, with his pace, his size, and he's one of those players that gets up in the air. Him and I running off each other, we would cause so many problems. He's left-footed, I'm right-footed. I feel like it would have been yin and yang. But I also have Marvell Wynn.
Oh,
another close friend of mine. Yeah,
that is not would have been one I would have guessed, yeah. Charlie. But
yeah. And those are the only. Oh, and Jermaine Jones.
Nice.
And those are the only 3 U.S. jerseys I have.
How'd you get? Do we have time? How'd you get Jermaine's? You didn't play together, right?
When he was playing with the Revs, he went off to play. I don't know if it was a friendly or World Cup qualifier. And when he came back, he gave me his 13.
He was just like, hey, man, been sitting around thinking about you. Here's a
jersey. Yeah.
Nice.
Saw you across the locker room. You need the 13, Charlie Davies. All right, we're going to
get everybody else from their club. So like Stu and his Bolton jersey, Gooch and his Milan jersey, Clint and Landon. Basically, Clarence Goodson and Brøndby in Denmark. That's a cool jersey. I have a big collection. Bees. I'm a huge Jersey fan. So
just email us extratime@mlssoccer.com. Send us your address, and Charlie will start shipping out those.
Yeah, so we don't have
jerseys.
access this year. We don't have access to our fantasy prize jerseys from last year. So Charlie's kindly said that he will
Gucci
donate.
and Yebu Milan game worn jersey, just stuff like that.
I don't know if
That's
it's
all
the one
have.
that he fought Zlatan in, but like we can assume it might
That's a
be.
training
could
top
be.
weeby.
Yeah,
Come on.
TBD. All right, let's get into it. Anders is already saying, "Hey guys, we're 5 minutes in. You haven't even hit anything of substance here." I don't agree with that.
So much substance.
I know. All right, let's get into this, Charlie. Your top number 9s for the U.S. men's national team. We're in a little bit of sort of a month of waiting, let's call it, for the U.S. national team. We have Nations League coming in that camp. We have the Gold Cup. We're going to find out how those rosters are sort of broken up and how Greg Berhalter sees both of those groups, and then how he's planning ahead for what is the big one, which is World Cup qualifying. That's what it's all about for the U.S. men's national team after missing the World Cup last go-round. The number 9 is a little bit unsettled, I would say. There are a lot of faces in there that you could choose from. There's some of the old guard. You could go Jozy Altidore. We still think that he has the ability to do it. Maybe the health is getting in his way. You could go with the new boys. Give me some Daryl Dike. You know this is a Daryl Dike podcast.
Weeby, is he going to say a list?
yeah,
I was just about to tee him up on it.
So we could get to that part.
Yeah, I
Instead
was
of you
just about to
listing
say-
all the names.
I said 2 names.
yeah.
I was
He's,
just
he's trying to
kinda-
he's trying to lead me. He's trying.
Yeah.
I'm leading the witness a little bit here right now.
Yeah.
All right, you're on the, stand
Yeah.
up on your own 2 feet, Charlie. Start at the top, man, and give us the list.
If there was a meaningful game today and we needed to win, and I have to play a number 9, this is my list right now as of today. I'm going with Daryl Dike as my starting striker for the U.S. men's national team. He's come on in the past year, so you got to give it to him. He's performing in the English Championship. Yes, people will say, it's not a top division in Europe. Well, it's a very difficult division to play and have success in, and he's doing it in a variety of different ways. Not only is his goal scoring 9 goals in 17 matches, but I think his hold-up play, his runs, just being able to understand different tactics and formations. I've really loved what I've seen from him. Number 2, Josh Sargent. Another player who's played a number of minutes this year in Bundesliga, hasn't scored all that much. 5 goals, 2 assists in 29 matches, but you know what you're going to get from him. Hard worker, consistent. I think he still needs to find the right club for him that plays a good brand of football that he can, really kind of show what he's about. Number 3 comes to Jozy Zardes. He's 29 years old. He's turning 30 in September. Last year, 9 goals, 4 assists in 18 matches. I love the relationship with him and Berhalter. He knows what to expect. You know what you're going to get from Jozy. Hard worker, good hold-up play. I think he's starting to develop different parts of his game that is needed in the international, match, as far as like just knowing everything going into these matches. It's like you're playing against people who are playing for their lives, for paychecks, for family. So understanding that before you put on the kit, and understanding the way that Greg Berhalter wants a team to play, I think is massive. 4, I'm going Theo Siabachu. Siabachu is playing in Europe. He's a big target striker. I'd like to see more of him. I think he obviously has all the potential to move on up the list, but just getting Europa League matches, he scored 3 goals against Bayern Leverkusen in 8 Europa League matches that he's played in. So I like, he's 24 years old, a lot of upside. Then you go down to Tim Weah. I'd see him more of a winger, but he has played the number 9 in large parts this year at Lille, and Lille is the top of the French division. So, he's competing with Jonathan David. So it's a very difficult position for him, but he's young and he's still playing really important minutes for a top club in France. Then
That's your 5.
Yeah. And this, I have to put an asterisk here. Okay. Jozy Altidore. We've talked about what he's done, everything he's meant to the national team over the past 10 years, really. But I think you need to light a fire under him. And you need to show, okay, we're not just handing out caps just because of what you've done and what you could do. We need to see what you're doing now. So staying healthy, and then also banging goals left and right, being the goal scorer that the U.S. men's national team needs him to be, and as well as Toronto. If he can do that, and play his way back to the national team, which is what you want. You want your starting striker for the U.S. men's national team to be hungry and to show that it means that much to you. If you see that from Jozy, that fire, that intensity, then he goes right up back to number one. But until you see that consistent playing time and the health, he's on the outside looking in. And I think that's exactly how it's got to be.
Just in case Jozy for some reason watching and wants to know, for the next Twitter thread, it's at Charlie Davies, the number 9. So we didn't say it. Chuck did.
Jozy's my boy. He knows, I got nothing but love for him, and I support him till the end. But at this time, we're talking about the national team, and everybody knows you're not getting onto the national team without playing. You got to be playing at your club, 1, and 2, performing. And for Jozy Altidore, we know his ceiling. That ceiling is you're scoring 15 goals a year in Major League Soccer at the very least with what you can do, his ability. So until we see that fire and saying, you know what, I'm not only am I healthy, but I'm performing, I'm delivering, I'm in form. That's when you say it's undeniable. We got to start Jozy Altidore, but we're not there yet.
It feels to me right now, Charlie, like there is to go back to number 1 in Daryl Dike, and I thought you explained well why you would have him there. It feels to me like there's a little bit of a fan club growing for Daryl Dike. Not just us. I'm talking about like Jozy. I'm talking about Eddie. If you go look in Daryl's Instagram comments, I know that's an inexact science here, folks, but it feels like people are rooting for him, want to see him succeed, and seeing like a crazy exponential curve on his development. What do you think Greg Berhalter sees? I know on the U.S. Soccer podcast, you guys talked to him a good amount. Like, what has Greg told you about Daryl, and what do you see in that sort of development arc from the young man?
I've gotten to watch him play in college soccer for 2 years now, and when you see him, he's strong. We all know his size and his ability to hold off defenders. But what can you do as far as making runs and intelligent runs and making runs maybe as decoy runs? He's doing all of that. And I think it's the rapid growth over the past year. Since he's gone to Orlando City, he's had to work 6 months just to get in. And once he did get in, he proved, okay, let me chip away at the confidence of my teammates, of Oscar Pereira, and let me earn my playing time. He's done that. Then I questioned his goal scoring ability. Can you do it consistently, and can you do it in different ways? At Barnsley, he's scoring from 25 yards out, rockets. He's near post runs. It's right place, right time, which is that intuition Chris Wondolowski's been best known for. It's a skill. You have to know tendencies and have a good sense of space as far as being in the box, not being tight to defenders. He's showing me he can link up. He can actually beat players on the dribble. He's not afraid to turn a defender on the half turn and then run at you. So I just think it's one of those things where we're seeing an evolution at an insane pace. And so now you're thinking, what is the limit? Because he's proving a lot of people wrong. Oh, he couldn't do this. He can't. He's doing it all. So I think the more high quality opposition he gets and coaching he gets, the better he's going to become. So he's 20 years old. There's a lot of room for improvement and growth, and there's no reason why he couldn't get there and be this top striker for the U.S. men's national team for years to come.
Barnsley now locked in their playoff place. I mean, they were just sort of like, hey, let's keep out of the relegation zone. We're in the middle. Let's just survive before he got there. Look at the jump they've made. I'm going to open this up to all of us. Where should he go? I mean, it doesn't seem like Barnsley's going to be the club that pays the big money that it's now probably going to take to get Daryl Dike. When you think about this larger picture for him in his career, and Charlie, you've been in this position of having to choose a next destination of thinking, okay, how do I develop? How do I stay in the national team? How do I become this player that I want to be and think I have the capability to become? What would you be thinking if you were Daryl Dike right now? What sort of clubs would you be hoping come into the picture with a big bag of cash?
If I'm Daryl Dike, the next move is vital. It is so important not to just go to the biggest club that comes in with a paycheck, because you could find yourself in a situation, let's just say hypothetically, you go to a Real Madrid, okay? And Karim Benzema is a starting striker. And you know the relationship between him and Zidane, that is always going to be the case as long as Benzema is there. You're not going to play. You need to go somewhere where you're going to play, and it's going to be a guarantee that you're at least going to get an opportunity to play, because nothing is ever just written in stone that you're going to play, you're going to be the starting striker no matter what. Because if you go in a lot of places, you go 5-6 games without a goal, guess what? You're on the bench, and it's the next guy's turn. And if that guy comes in and starts scoring, you're going to be there for a long time until he gets cold again. So at this point, I would say Daryl Dike, go to a league that's super competitive, to a team that is in the upper half of that league, whether it's, if you go to a Bundesliga, which I think he'd be a fantastic striker in, a team that, you're going to always be on the front foot, you're going to have possession, you're not scrapping to survive every match, whether it's a Mönchengladbach or even a Dortmund, like a Leverkusen, clubs like that. I think he would have a tremendous amount of success. Maybe going to Holland and playing for one of the big three, if you could do that for an Ajax or a PSV, if those clubs were interested. But going to a club, if you're going to a smaller league, one of the top teams in that league that are guaranteed a Champions League place, or a Bundesliga, maybe a Liga, where you're playing for one of the clubs in the top 8 of the table. So it's just really important he goes to a place where the coach believes in you, the sporting director believes in you, and they're going to give you every opportunity to maximize your potential.
I agree with everything Charlie said. I just think we should remember right now that he has that. And if they get promoted, it probably makes a ton of sense to stay.
No,
right?
Gosh.
You want him to play in a top league? He's on a team that completely trusts him.
Do you think Barnsley,
if they're a Premier League side,
it takes to right now, this current squad, if they got promoted, do you think they're going to stay in the Premier League?
What does it matter? He needs to play in the Premier League. He needs to be starting every week. He needs to show who he is.
You're defending the whole game. You're defending the whole game.
But if he plays next year and scores goals and has a great year, then you have the ability to pick your next spot, probably at a level that you can't right now. You're talking about getting playing time. He's only, a year into his professional soccer career? If they get promoted, it makes a ton of sense for him to stay and continue to be a part of that, especially if he's the centerpiece of the team. You're going to be the first guy on everyone's scouting report against you going into the Premier League season and over the course of a year, which is something maybe no American's ever been this case for at a top level like that, especially in the Premier League. So it would be pretty huge for him, I think, and especially young in his development to, as you said, Charlie, have a coach that trusts you, have a sporting director that trusts you. They're not bringing in a replacement. They're not trying to push you out, all of those things to get that opportunity.
They might not be able to afford him to be.
Probably. That's a decent.
And two, I would like to see him at a club like Brighton. Brighton would be a great club for Daryl Dike. It's a smaller club, but they play good football. They have an attacking style of football. Graham Potter, the manager, he loves youth. He gives them chances. They want to develop players and sell them on. That would be a perfect place for a player like Daryl Dike. So I'm with you in that sense.
Anything else to tear apart on his list, Dave, or does it feel spot on to you?
Well, I have to admit I haven't watched Sibachu as much. Obviously, just chose to play for the U.S. Has scored goals in Europa League in the games that I've watched, which is huge. I was a little surprised. I think that you went with some more unproven pieces in that top 5. Giassi's really the only proven piece.
Proven in what sense?
Not playing for a national team, playing at a professional level for a year and a half. Any of those things?
They've all played.
Yeah, but Weah's played on the wing for the most part.
Not this year.
This year he's played on the wing a fair amount.
He played more times up top than he has on the wing.
Doesn't really start a lot. Is the other
correct? But but you're playing. You're playing first team minutes for the best team in France at the moment.
But I'd say the big thing with that list is you've got 5 guys who do 5 different things well. So it's Berhalter's going to have to find that balance of this is the best guy versus what do I want to do in this game? What does the opponent give us? What does it look like? And I think that's pretty exciting for him, and that's pretty exciting for the group. I think Giassi Zardes is still the highest floor, where if we had to win tomorrow, he'd be the guy I would start. But Daryl's getting very close week in and week out. And if he plays well in the playoffs in a must-win, everything's on it type game, that's a pretty good start to show that I can start in a big game.
Pretty good start?
Well, Charlie, I love him, but he's scoring at a rate that kind of makes no sense. And while it's great to see the run, you know how it is then once he doesn't score for 3 games, or once it doesn't go right, he will still have to rebound from that. And so it's not solidified that he's a 40-goal-a-season striker for the rest of his career.
Well, this is insane. We had the Real Madrid example and 40 goals. I'm like, my mind is completely blown right now. I still think when you look at this, what I take away from this is that it's still wide open. That this competition isn't set in any way. There are guys that have different strengths, different abilities, different situations at the club level. Greg Berhalter has to take all that into account, bring it to the national team and say, okay, what's going to work best with the other personnel around them?
And then he looks at it and says,
who compliments the other guys?
Scored a goal this weekend. So
that's right. And he gives Ayo a call and he's like, how's your body, man?
Is there anybody in your mind that should be on this list that wasn't?
Those are my top 5.
The one that I would say that maybe we wouldn't come out and say this guy should be there, but that Greg has consistently shown faith in, and a more of a false 9 situation is Jesus Ferreira.
Yeah, but he's injured right now.
He would not be in my top 5. I know he's injured, but he would not be in my top 5. Mm-hmm. But Greg has consistently said that, look, he does a job that we like and has played him. So I think you have to take that into account.
The only name you didn't mention, besides Gioacchini, who I think we all know is still working his way there, is Matthew Hoppe.
Yeah.
Who scored goals for Schalke, has never gotten a national team look. And that's another guy who I think is probably in the condo this summer, right? To get whether it's Gold Cup minutes or be in that Nations League roster.
Where would you have Daryl Dike? Nations League or Gold Cup?
Nations League.
Mm-hmm. Nations League.
Okay, so you have 3 strikers for Nations League. Who are they going to be? Is it going to be DK, Sargent, and Jozy, or do you save Jozy for the Gold Cup because you know he'll have a little break for MLS reasons and the scheduling there? How do you put that group together if you're Greg Berhalter and you know you really need those first team reps, and I'm talking first team
mm-hmm.
for World Cup qualifying, and you haven't had that many opportunities to truly have your first entire group together?
You have to play the players that you think you're going to need for World Cup qualifying. And a lot of people talk about lack of experience for a lot of these players in against international competition, especially when something's on the line, not having played in a World Cup qualifier in Honduras, in San Pedro Sula, in Trinidad, in Mexico. Nations League, you need to have your top players with you for that tournament because you get a semifinal against Honduras. If you win that, most likely, it's Mexico, Costa Rica, most likely Mexico. Those are 2 matches that you can't afford not to play in. If you're a youngster without
you're saying that they replicate
experience.
The experience of World Cup qualifying in a
as close as it'll come because you're playing in Denver. It's not like you're playing on the road with hostile fans.
Hey,
which
no
is
Classico, Chuck. No Classico. All right, there's some big World Cup qualifiers that went
in
down.
June, less likely. But but that one thing I'd say with Jozy is the only thing you haven't seen from him is playing with the more European-based players because over the last 16 months, everything has been regionalized for the most part, unless you're Sebastian Lletget. So that's why I think Jozy goes to Nations League. I also would say of all of the players in the U.S. pool, it's not outside the realm of possibility that the guy from the Columbus Crew that Greg Berhalter brought there and coached to an MLS Cup finalist is the one guy he could probably get for both if he really fights for it and thinks it makes sense. But to Charlie's point, the focus is World Cup qualifying. Your best group is going to Nations League. All 3 of those guys are in the pool, are the top 3 in the pool. They need to be in that group, at least for training, at least understanding the travel and the way the schedule is going to be set up going into the fall.
And for the Crew, maybe that was part of the pitch to Bradley Wright Phillips.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
We've talked to Greg. We know he's going to be gone for an extended period in the summer. You are going to get those reps. Come be with us. You can reap the rewards during that time. Before we get to Taylor Rockwell and continue the Daryl Dike podcast, because that is what this will continue to be as we talk about the best seasons for U.S. men's national team players in Europe. Give me just your quick 2-minute, and I'm timing you, Chuck, on Christian Pulisic and his situation right now. We know people care about that. We know that that's extremely important when you talk about chemistry with whatever striker plays up top. Give me 2 minutes, man.
Well, I think Christian Pulisic has finally found his rhythm and the trust in the manager. Since really March 13th, when he got the start at Leeds, he played 68 minutes. He hasn't been injured, and health has always been something that's, I guess, held Christian back. Now he's fully healthy. He's scored, a brace against Crystal Palace on April 10th. I think that gave another boost of confidence with the manager, with the players. They all know what Christian Pulisic can do. He's shown at Chelsea he's the guy when he's fit. I think over the past 2 or 3 weeks, Everyone now knows he's got his spot in the starting 11. No need to worry. He just has to stay healthy. That's the only thing that's going to hold him back, because he has all the tools, and everyone wants to see him on the pitch because he does make a difference. So I'm excited because I feel like he finally got over the hill, and now it's just, okay, let me focus back to recovery and performing when I get on the pitch.
So I have my LA Galaxy shrine over here, which has been just doing gangbuster work for Chicharito and the squad. I'm going to set up the Pulisic shrine as well. We need that health, man. We need that health. All right, let's talk to Taylor Rockwell. We chatted him with last week about the best American seasons in Europe for 2021. All right, let's kick Charlie Davies out for just a second and welcome in the man, the myth, the legend, Total Soccer Show's own Taylor Rockwell. Yes, sir. We are so happy to have you, Taylor. We're stealing your content here in this segment. I want you to know that. We're taking it from you. You do a wrap-up.
That's trouble. Are you hacking me right now? Is that what you mean? This is disconcerting.
Yeah, we're co-opting you. You do a great roundup on Total Soccer Show of U.S. national team prospects, players in Europe, updating people on what they do. You guys tune in, you watch, you give insights that maybe others who don't have the time or the inclination are able to give. And here we are doing exactly that. We're going to try to narrow down, name, determine, debate the U.S. men's national team European Player of the Season. Now, we know that we're doing this right now on April 22nd. The show will come out a little bit later. So bear with us if there's something that happens this weekend, a.k.a. Gio Reyna scores or Daryl Dike goes completely wild yet again. That might change the way we're talking about this. Again, April 22nd. On our next show in May on Club and Country, we'll try to say, yes, definitively, this is the U.S. men's national team European Player of the Season. But let's get that field narrowed down. And Taylor, since you're the guest, I will cede the floor to you. When you think about the best seasons this year for U.S. national team players across the pond, what jumps to mind? And how are you determining that?
So best is honestly kind of hard because I don't think anybody has had like a head and shoulders above everyone else season. And I think the players that have maybe come close to that, like say Daryl Dike, not trying to be disrespectful, but have done that at championship level with Barnsley. And is that the same as doing like okay and getting regular appearances with Borussia Dortmund? I think it's roughly the same. So if I'm going with like the player that I think has been most impressive to me, I probably end up with Serginho Dest as my nominee. I think. Go ahead.
We were doing this. Dave had to remind me of Serginho Dest. It's almost like so still otherworldly to me that we have a starting player at Barcelona with Messi that I don't even
win a double.
Remember. Yeah, I don't even.
Right?
It's like it doesn't connect to me.
Yeah, I do that too. I do that too with Stefan, certainly. I will be like, oh, right, there's another American of the Champions League. But there are so many to track that it's like, right, so there's Juventus, there's Barcelona, there's Chelsea, there's Dortmund. There, like you can kind of keep going. The list expands. But I think for the way he came into that club where he turns down Bayern Munich and they desperately needed a right back, I would argue they still probably do. He goes to Barca and then they change up the formation. He's playing a different position, finds his footing, and is now a consistent starter for a Barcelona team that, while frequently maligned, and especially right now they should be, I think still a very good Barcelona team.
He could win a double when this thing's done, right? He could win La Liga, which would be American first. And they won Copa del Rey or whatever it was from 2017, because that's what Spain does, is they just roll every trophy back over. So in your mind, he's a combination of individual quality and then team production this year when you're thinking of best.
Yeah, I think so. I think probably across the board, maybe the U.S. national team factors into that a little bit with all the players sort of coming out of that camp and being like, yeah, he's real good. He's real good. I think that's part of it as well. But I often go with like do they stand out in a negative way when they first move? And if they don't, if they're just kind of playing consistent, solid soccer, that's a big start for me. And that's kind of where Dest was. He gets posterized a few different times on a few different occasions. That happens with a defender. But I think since then, he has developed the defensive side. He's developed his transition game. And especially, I see him taking people on more, which is a thing we did not see when he first started playing wingback. So I think for the development as well, I give the edge to Serginho Dest, though I'm open to conversations about other people. We can go wherever y'all want.
Anders immediately, when we started this and you said Serginho, just wrote in the chat, that's it, that's the segment. Anders, I'm not sure that's how this works. Like a good producer might needle us or push us to a different place with this one or try to pull holes.
Can I do that and push a little here?
Yeah.
You talked about coming into a new team. I agree with you. Just just being there is great. What if you shine off the bat like Weston McKennie? And I would say maybe not this second half of the season, but because I had to get numbers up because I don't remember numbers ever. He's right now over 20 starts on the year, won a trophy as well. Juventus scored some goals, big moments in Champions League. Does he push into this conversation for another guy who made a move that's gone super well?
And does it also come into your logic here, or our collective logic, that while Barcelona committed to Sergiño Dest and said, hey, we're buying you. Here's the money. You're ours. It's permanent. Welcome for as long as it takes. You have a permanent contract. Weston was sort of in that middle ground. Like, we all thought, this could happen, that this would be made permanent. But also, is this just like Schalke they have to move him, for one. And Weston, when he hears Juve, is going to be like, I'm going to Juve. I don't care who else is around here. That they exercise that loan also has to be part of this equation as well. He came in and they're just like, here's the money. Here's the money. We actually do want to make this deal permanent.
I still don't understand why Schalke were okay with this whole setup to begin with. It's like the club that's desperate for money and need to reinvest. They're like, sure, take him on loan for a year and hopefully you'll pay us at the end. Yeah, I think Weston is a very good shout. He is, I think, my favorite player for the national team in the pool right now. I think it is the case that he comes into a team where I didn't think he would be a consistent player for them. It felt like, okay, he'll get some cup minutes, he'll get some second half minutes. He's sort of a let's see what he does type player, and that he has become a consistent, reliable starter for them. And I think reliable is an important word when you talk about him in relation to some of the other Juve players. I think maybe it's just that they've kind of faded in the way things have gone, and now the conversation's about, is Pirlo the right one? So maybe that's not really about him. Maybe that's an unfair knock. So, Gus, I think you got a point.
And so the thing that stinks out to me for him this year is this is his best year, right? Not only is he playing at his highest level, I think you mentioned consistency. Like, that wasn't really the story for him at Schalke, and it wasn't the story for the team. So he's raised his level as he's raised his team, which was what surprised me, because I was the same as you. Yeah, he could play 5 spots, so it made sense to go to Juve because you'll just fill in wherever someone's out. And then he made himself a starter, which was huge. And as bad as they can be and as annoying as the guy who runs them is, it's still Juve.
It is. It is. And you're absolutely right that it's coming from a Schalke where he's a right back, a right wing back, a center midfielder, a center defensive midfielder. Like, he's playing so many different roles that for him to go to Juve, play another different role, usually a wide midfielder, even though they're usually pretty narrow, and do really well, I think is not surprising, but it is very exciting at the same time. I think the only reason why I still give the edge to Dest is just because I feel like McKennie is doing the things that we know he can do. He's just doing them with Juve instead of Schalke, whereas I do feel like Dest has developed a little bit more. He's changed his game a little bit more on both the defensive and attacking sides of the game. That said, Weston may have done the same thing. I just tend to notice the things I love about him and focusing in on all the things that make me happy.
I mean, and you have the big moments for him. You also have off the field moments. I don't think those necessarily count in best season, but he has been in headlines.
Have a good time, baby. That's all he's trying to do.
Nothing wrong with that. Hey, be safe, everybody out there. But, sometimes young men do young men things. That's just the way it works. Now, the momentum is a little bit, it's waning. There were moments there where it was like, oh my God, Weston McKennie is taking, Serie A, Champions League by storm here. That's where Daryl Dike comes in. And I know we got to count him down. There's demerits for the fact that it hasn't been there all year. But I'm going to paint you a beautiful picture. And there were times where you couldn't.
Is the beautiful picture going to feature Barnsley? Because if so, no, you're not.
I'm going to paint you a beautiful picture.
Do you love volleyball? Because Vivi's got a pitch for you.
You know what? I actually do enjoy volleyball as a sport. And
that's because you're like 19 feet tall, man.
I'm sure that, you remember those you have in middle school, like the soccer team comes and plays like the volleyball team, but just with their heads? That's Barnsley. We should send Barnsley on a tour here where they're just doing it with their heads. But either way, There's a scenario here where he could have the most impactful season of an American in Europe ever. And I think if, let's say, Barnsley get promoted, that is the key here. Or let's say Barnsley is in a final at Wembley even. Or hell, even just makes the championship playoffs. They were a team that was desperately clawing away from relegation. They were a middle table team before Daryl arrived. Now, let's not give him 100% of the credit. But he has essentially taken a club by storm. He's helped drive them up the table. He has been this phenomenon of immense proportions. And if he pushes Barnsley into the Premier League, and let's be honest, Barnsley were not going to the Premier League, and they probably still aren't without him. That might be the most impactful season for an American in Europe ever. And it's just a fairy tale. It's just an absolute fairy tale. Like they would make movies off of something like that.
I think that's totally fair. And I will say that from the perspective of playing in the amateur league here in Richmond, I've played for a long time with a guy who is a Barnsley fan. He's from there. His name is Stu. And it was usually, I will not curse on the show, but I will say that our usual conversation about Barnsley was, are they still bad? We used a different word for that. And every single week it was like, Barnsley still bad? Always. Yes. And it was just sort of that conversation every time. And I think now it's a little bit more enthusiastic. It's a little bit more optimism. So yeah, he's restored hope.
What do you think about Daryl Dike? Tell me his full Daryl Dike thoughts.
Loves him. Everybody who has seen Daryl Dike play, I think, loves him because Barnsley are, I think, a team that are more okay with being physical. I think that's been the case for them for a while. I don't think they were ever going to be mistaken for a tiki-taka pep side. And I think that Daryl Dike can handle that physicality and certainly hold his own, but also score goals and bring in some technical flair and score overhead kicks out of nowhere. I think it's the kind of perfect combination for English fans of the generation that were like, you should maybe leave a boot in every now and then. That's fine. Like, I think there is an appreciation for his style and ability.
So what's the spot he should go?
What do you mean in our rankings of?
No, in Europe, like what's his level?
I think Premier League. I think right now, at least. I mean, that said, you all probably know more than I do. I mean, you all do know more than I do when it comes to Daryl Dike. I'll own that one because you all watched him a lot more than I have, at least in Major League Soccer. And so I will own the fact that I'm still a little bit like I was with Leicester, like right up until they actually won the title, of being like, but let's see how this goes. And I think the way he is performing, I don't know if he is overperforming expected goals, but I kind of feel like he has to be. And so there is that, like, but is this him in a complete run of form, having the confidence? And what happens if maybe he misses a chance or two? Does he get the confidence back and keep going? Or do we see the downturn in form? As long as he keeps it going, I think he can certainly play in the Premier League, because I think he, for all the reasons that we've already talked about, has the skill level, but also the physicality.
You bite your tongue when you talk about Daryl. Don't you dare put that curse on Daryl's head. This is Daryl Dike's safe space.
He's a Virginia product. Virginia loves its own. Virginia's for lovers, and we love Daryl Dike.
He's an Oklahoma guy. Don't try and take it.
He's ours now. We have Guar and Dave Matthews, and one of those we don't need. And Allen Iverson. We've got Allen Iverson too. I'll take that. That's fine.
Wow, AI.
All right, so those are three good candidates. Are there any other in the upper echelon? Could you put Tyler Adams in that group? Could you put Gio Reyna in that group as he sort of burst in with Borussia Dortmund? I mean, he showed immense promise and had these super high moments. He's still a young guy, so we shouldn't expect the world of him. Who else could be in this conversation?
I think there's a couple other ones. I do think Brendan Aronson has forced his way into the conversation in a way that I did not expect when Szoboszlai left for Leipzig. It seemed like from the Salzburg message boards that I read that were in translated English, admittedly, there was a lot of speculation like we're not going to be able to replace that. He has the size that we needed. Brendan Aronson doesn't have that as much. We'll see. And if anything, he's improved them, or at the very least slotted in pretty seamlessly, and looks confident and like angry, which I don't know. He's got the Philly fan influence. I feel like he doesn't back down from challenges, and I think he's definitely made himself a fan favorite. And I won't be surprised if he continues down that Red Bull pipeline.
Okay, I had Brendan Aronson in my long list as well. Mm-hmm. We mentioned Tyler. Mm-hmm. We have to bring up Christian Pulisic, who it was not better than it was last year, so it feels like a stretch. But there's still a chance that he plays in a Champions League final. He'll probably play in another FA Cup final. So he has to be in the conversation, whether he's the winner or not, which I think clearly he would have been last year. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's the obvious stuff about where does he fit in? Does Thomas Tuchel like him? Is there bad blood there, pre-existing bad blood? And any of that seem to be the case at this point. It seems like it is maybe Tuchel being a little bit meticulous and wanting Pulisic to do certain things. And now that he seems to be doing more of that, he seems to be doing more on the field. So I think you're right that he probably, if we see him continue to get minutes as the season winds down, not even starting every single game, but maybe starting one game, subbing on in another, I think that's an okay rate for Pulisic. I think it just means that it's an okay rate as opposed to yes, he is head and shoulders above everybody else.
What a complete change in the way that we think about American players and about this program and about everything else, that Christian Pulisic, who may play in a Champions League final, an FA Cup final for Chelsea, who's had a tough season, yes, but in the past would certainly still be at the very top of this list, is sort of yeah, but no.
You guys, if we did this show 3 years ago, maybe 4, Tim Ream getting promoted with Fulham potentially would have been the top of our list.
I mean, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but I remember when Sasha Kleshton at Anderlecht was our only American in the Champions League. Like it's changed. It's changed a lot. I do have one more name that is not a player. I would throw in Pellegrino Matarazzo as a player that I kind of constantly forget about and fail to discuss when we have people on to talk Bundesliga. It's always like, oh yeah, and him. I meant to ask about him, but he's a Nagelsmann disciple. They play high intensity, high octane soccer. And I think he's got Stuttgart in a position that I don't think many people thought they would be when the season began. And I think that he is American born, but has got the team to buy into his Nagelsmann's Ralph Rangnick's style. It still speaks volumes that he can kind of convey what he wants and get a team on board and get them to stay in the Bundesliga. And I imagine he'll start getting some looks from bigger, more consistently successful clubs.
How about another guy in the Bundesliga? John Anthony Brooks. Looks like he may be leading Wolfsburg to the Champions League. He's just game in, game out starter. It feels like he's the quietest of all the Americans abroad. And not just because he doesn't speak out that often. Like, I don't hear him. I don't see
he said that
quotes
recently,
from John Anthony Brooks.
think.
He's not at the forefront in that sense. And
I think he did a piece that Ivis wrote up.
He did. Yeah, Ivis had a great write-up with him
a week ago. And I agree with you where I was like, yeah, right, him.
Yeah,
that guy. The guy who started 29 games in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, and we're like, yeah, he's a starter for the U.S. For sure, start him. Who's going to play next to him? But then we're not, like, I'm not bookmarking Wolfsburg, and I don't know why.
Did you already say that they have one of the best defenses in the league? Because I also constantly forget that. If there's a person that I forget more than Pellegrino Matarazzo, it's John Brooks. Like I don't know why, if it's just the center back thing or if it's probably the combination of center back plus just very consistent. So you come to expect it, but if they're not playing in the Champions League and it's not for maybe one of those top tier teams, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, he's doing good. He's fine. Like, I think that we don't talk about him that much when we do those Americans abroad recaps, because if we're looking at center backs, it's Chris Richards, it's Mark McKenzie. With John Brooks, it's like, yeah, he's the number one starter at center back for the US, and that's going to be the case. So maybe it is him. He probably should be higher up on my list.
Should Richards be in this? Because Richards went from basically youth teams, promise, what will he be, to it looks like a real legit starter with Hoffenheim, and a guy that probably is going to get, it hasn't happened, right? Either sold to them or sold to somebody else in the Bundesliga to play a real consistent role in a first team and maybe challenged to be the guy that's next to John Brooks.
Yeah. I think that's a fair question to raise, because I think earlier in the season he's linked with Union Berlin, and that's like, okay, yeah, like go there on loan. Maybe they're not going to stay up. Maybe they will. You'll get some minutes, and then we'll see how it goes at Bayern. I always expected that he finishes this season going back to Bayern Munich, and then it's like, some more time with Bayern too. Maybe he gets another loan, and then we'll see where it goes. And you're right that it does feel like that move to Hoffenheim will be made permanent. The only reason why it wouldn't that I can see is because maybe Bayern are like, we need some center backs, and he's doing all right. Like, yeah.
Jerome Boateng and David Alaba are already out the door. That's an opening. That would be wild.
I would not mind that. I also did not realize that Niklas Süle is as fast as he is.
Yeah.
He's like one of the 3 fastest players for Bayern Munich. And so if that's the case, he can definitely play it right back if you want somebody to be another attacking option, if you don't trust Benjamin Pavard. And so then you have more center back openings. So yeah, I think that Chris Richards has gone from like, oh yeah, he's playing at Bayern too, I guess I'll try to find a way to stream that, to like, oh, he's starting for Hoffenheim and not standing out in a negative way. Again, that is always my like bar when it comes to defenders.
Names I haven't heard, and I'm just going to throw them out there just so we can comment on them. My God, there's so many at this point. Because we haven't talked about Sargent. Haven't said a word about Josh Sargent. Didn't say anything about Yunus Musa.
That feels correct.
Either.
That feels less correct.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched some Werder. I've watched a good amount of Werder Bremen this year, and I have sworn myself off Werder Bremen.
Yunus Musa might be my answer. I kind of forgot about him as well. I don't know why that's the case, but he.
Well, I think the case is that Valencia's been bad, it's Valencia. It's epic that he's broken in at his age. But in this conversation, we were talking about Des potentially winning La Liga, what McKennie's done, what Pulisic could do in an FA Cup or a Champions League, blah, blah. It's not in that category this year to me.
You're right. I think I'm showing my age.
Talk kindly about Yunus Musa now because he's amazing.
I think I'm just showing my age because I'm still like Valencia. They're the biggest club as opposed to the club that has no money constantly and hires Gary Neville. Right. Forgot about that. I think that first of all, there is just the will he, won't he play for the U.S. national team, and that he commits, I think maybe like raises him in my love a little bit. But it's also, he has, I think Joe Lowry dubbed it the Musa maneuver is what we ended up going with. But like once a game, he has this just like lung busting run down the touchline where he does the Gareth Bale thing of he'll go out of bounds and then still outrun the opposition player. And that he has these sort of electrifying moments where he's capable of things that I'm not sure how other many players in the pool are capable of, but then can still go back to like 1 and 2 touch passing and keeping it very simple. I think that versatility and that variety in the way he plays is why he's such an important player and can be so important to the US. I think you're right, though, that maybe like the relative weakness of Valencia this season. All right, I'll go back to Serginho Dest. I'm back on board with Serginho Dest. 2 Americans in La Liga. That is not a thing that we get very often.
It's new. Speaking of, we didn't talk about it when we talked about the noted soccer business people at Schalke. But Matthew Hoppe was not a professional soccer player and scored goals to earn a professional contract. Look, what did it get for Schalke? That's their own doing. But he's got. I mean, he's a fairy tale story too of a guy that like none of us were talking about. Then all of a sudden, for like 2 beautiful months, was just this headline player constantly. Then there's some others that I feel like we had hope for that just never got there. I mean, Mark McKenzie for me, it's been a slow start for him in Belgium so far. That was one I was hoping for a little bit more, but he came in midseason. We'll see if that can change for him. Tyler Adams, though, maybe that's where we'll finish here. What have we made of Tyler Adams' year in Europe? What do you think about what's happened with RB Leipzig and sort of his positionality and going back and forth a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's another confusing one. It's a little similar to Christian Pulisic in that you want to see him start every single game, and that he doesn't. Then I think for me, when he doesn't, I'm sort of like, oh no, that's not good. And when I see him at right back or right wing back, I get a little bit nervous as well. But then I sort of rely on every single media person I ask who covers the Bundesliga is like, nope, Nagelsmann loves him, loves everything he brings. And there have been games, if I had my notes, I will try to find it during a moment of silence, in which he basically did like turn the entire second half around for Leipzig. I think it was the Bayern game, which they ended up losing, but he was the one who was fighting for every single ball, pushing that team, dropping in to get it, and then driving forward with it, connecting passes. It was a kind of full midfield game that I don't think I've seen from Tyler Adams. And so I think this season hasn't been that he's an every game starter and we know he's at that elite next level, but he's just such an important player for that team that he's going to stay there and continue to be so. If Nagelsmann moved, he feels like the type of player that Nagelsmann would take with him because he can fit into the system and do exactly what he's asked to do.
And let me give you this to think about if that's what we're closing out on. He started 10 games last year, 20 games this year. Right? And like all you want to see is establishing yourself. And as you said, that Bayern game was big to me, and that Nagelsmann chose to start him at defensive midfield in that game. And it felt less you play right wing back because you're not good enough, and more he plays him there because he trusts him.
Yeah.
And we
don't need to talk about Kevin Campbell being suspended, but yeah, that's fine.
No, but it could have been Haidara as defensive midfielder, as it has been. Sabitzer could have been pulled deeper. He's used Tyler in other ways when those guys haven't been there. And I think, to me, I've walked away from this season, as you're saying, as Nagelsmann trusts him everywhere and doesn't trust other players everywhere more than, well, he's not good enough to break in at that spot.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you drove home that it was Bayern, because now it's in my memory. Yeah, that the thing that he did, we talked about this on the show, that I thought was like genuinely pretty fascinating, is that he was actually like positioned as the right central midfielder with Sabitzer in the middle, but then Sabitzer was always stepping higher and Adams filled in. And so at first I thought like, oh, his job is just to kind of stay as the holding midfielder. And then what I realized is, no, his job is to track Thomas Muller. That's what he was doing, was sitting in front of Muller so that when Bayern would try to break and counter, that pass wasn't on. Muller still found opportunities because he's Thomas Muller and that's what he does. But that, again, shows you where he is in Nagelsmann's estimations, that it's like, we need somebody to mark their most creative and deceptive and challenging player. Let's get Tyler at it. And he's going to be a right central midfielder, but also a holding midfielder and a man marker. That's 3 different jobs. That's a lot. And 10 times 2 is 20. So double the starts. I'm good at math. I'm good at math, guys.
I mean, this is
we've
how
now
we'll end
cursed
it.
Tyler and sent him to Tottenham potentially.
Almost
next
certainly.
year, but-
Almost certainly. Are we just sending everyone to Tottenham?
Please let that not be the case. This is where we'll end it, and we'll end it here because as we talk about this, it occurs to me that we are sort of saying, wasn't quite good enough to be in the top tier for Tyler Adams, a 22-year-old American midfielder who's now played more than 3,000 minutes in the Bundesliga, who... we aren't going to end it here, as this piece of paper shows on YouTube, who is playing a crucial, trusted role for the number 2 team in the Bundesliga for one of the growing powers in European soccer, and again, is just 22 years old.
Yeah, but last year he caused the winner in the Champions League quarterfinal, so he's got to live up to that level.
We didn't talk Tim Weah. We should have talked Tim Weah.
No, I think you're okay.
You think so?
I honestly, like.
Give me the pitch then.
Oh, it's not. It's really. I think this sounds so bad, but like this is the appropriate way to talk about Tim Weah's season a little bit. I think to be like, oh yeah, right, Tim Weah, because there was the maybe hope that he was going to be a consistent starter for Lille. He has some injuries, and he is a player who Alexis from the Cooligans, who I know you all have had on before. We were talking about how he feels like he could be the first like superstar American soccer player in that he's got the game, like the talent to do so, but also the off field, the fashion. I think he raps a little bit. Like he's got all these different interests that I think he will one day be a massively big player for the US. And he's very, very good, but I think hasn't had the consistency, the goal scoring threat, and the just kind of overall development to be in that conversation for best Americans this season.
Yeah, just, you know.
That is my anti-pitch,
just
I guess.
Just the son of George
Sorry.
Weah, just playing in the first division in France.
Yeah, no big deal.
Goals. Was at PSG, but for us Americans now, that is nothing. We got a lot more to worry about.
Yeah.
It's been a great year so far for USMNT players in Europe. We will try to name the best USMNT player over there in our May show, but for the meantime, Taylor, tell people how they can get at you. I'm sure they already do. I'm sure everybody listening listens to TSS, so.
Well, if they do, that's very kind of them. But yeah, it's the Total Soccer Show podcast. We also do Soccer 101, where we break down theoretically like beginner ideas. It used to be like, what do the numbers mean? And how did the lines on the field work? And now I think I did Bielsa this week, which was a big one and a long one. They get a little bit more involved as we go. But that's really fun as well. So people should check that out too.
Everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. We're talking Canada with Richie Laryea. Charlie, Dave, their interview starts now.
Well, for this next AT&T 5G call to the field, let's move north of the border, but in Florida at the same time. It's a chaotic year, but we are so thankful to have Richie Laryea of Toronto FC and the Canadian men's national team with us for this club and country show. Our first Canadian representative, Richie. So this is a big deal for you. You gotta carry the flag.
No pressure at all. I think I'll be able to do good with it.
So this is our opportunity to get into your camp a little bit. You've already started World Cup qualifying while the U.S. is still waiting to get there. You've already gotten together as a group a few times under John Herdman. What is this group like? A lot of you came up in different ways, and now it feels like there's a core moving forward, and you had a few games to get together. What is the personalities like? Who's running the group chat? Who's getting megged in training? Give us the deets.
It's a good group, man. We have majority, I think, a younger to middle core group, which I think is very good for this cycle of a World Cup and also the next one. So we have a pretty good age range right now, but it's fun, man. It's fun to see guys around my age and even guys older than me that I looked up to growing up in Canada, playing against them or watching them play games while I sat on the sidelines. So it's fun, man. You get to see, a guy like Atiba who is getting better with age, it seems. And then you have Junior, you have guys like Oso and Kaba that I used to watch growing up. So it's cool. You also have like Daniil that brings in good leadership as well. So just across the board, there's just so many different guys that bring leadership to the team. And then you have a middle group core of guys, which it feels like we all played with or against each other. So it's fun in that sense. And then we got a younger group, obviously the Alfonsos, and then, like we mentioned, Tejan, some of the young cats here at Toronto FC, Jaden, Noble, Ralph, some kids doing well in Europe as well. So we got a good, fun group. I think it helps when everyone likes each other and everyone also has known each other for so long. So some of these guys I've played with since the age of 10 or so. So it's been a good experience.
It's remarkable to me because my first match was against Atiba Hutchinson as a professional in Copenhagen, and he's still going. And I'm 3 years, into this retirement life. So it's great to see Atiba still being a major part of the Canadian national team.
Real quick, did he shave Kamal's head, or did Kamal say, "I'm just going to go with the Atiba look"?
I think Kamal's trying to go with the Atiba look.
Okay, just had to throw that in there.
When you wake up early on a Saturday morning, are you turning on the TV to watch Bayern, Lille, or Besiktas?
Man, you guys trying to make me lose friends on this.
Hey, no, I'm just curious. Who are you watching?
I mix it up because obviously with Besiktas, I've been best friends with Kyle. I've played with him since I've been 9 years old, so that's a no-brainer. And then obviously when you get the chance to watch Alfonso kill it at Bayern Munich like he has the last 2 years, I don't take that lightly either, and I definitely flick it on to watch him. And then you have Jonathan David at Lille, which I think is a little bit of a sleeper at times for some reason for people, and he's incredible. It's just what that kid's doing right now, and as hard of a league as it can be to play in France, how physical it is and all that type of stuff, he's doing really well, and he's holding his own, and I think he's done extremely well, and maybe he's flown still under the radar somehow, some way. But yeah, I get to watch all of them. Luckily, sometimes they're all at different times, so I'm going to TV, watching little man run in front of me, and my wife chase him, and then when it gets to halftime, I switch with her and I chase him around for a little bit, and then I'm back to watching these games.
Jonathan David showing off the French as well, which has been pretty impressive on those post-game interviews. Bilingual country, of course, in Canada, so impressive for him. We talked a little about the culture side. Take us into the soccer side. Not a lot of us know John Herdman that well, obviously. A ton of success with the women's national team. What is his, how does he talk through the game? What is he trying to build in this group? How often are you in communication with him, maybe when you're not in camp?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when we're not in camp, he does a very good job of, either getting us on Zooms. We have a WhatsApp group. We constantly speaking. He speaks to some of the older guys to then pass on messages to the younger guys as well. So he's very good in that sense. He keeps us engaged. We do things to keep us unified and together as a group. But as a coach, he's fierce. He's a competitor. It's something we really needed in this country and for this nation. So he's brought that side of it with his own foundation and the resources that he's using, and also just the structure of the way he wants us to play with the players that we have. It's all been top class. So, we always say it, but hats off to him because he's got the nation behind our team right now. And it's a very good situation for us, I think, right now with a group of players that we have and the way we're playing. You have guys playing a lot of good minutes in the top teams in Europe, which we needed for a long time, I think, in Canada. Now we're finally getting it. And now you have guys in MLS, the Osos, the Mark Anthony's, Sam Piet, Kamal, Maxime Crépeau, the list goes on and on, Tejan. We have guys starting and playing significant minutes on their clubs as well. So it's everyone, when we get in, feels match fit. Guys have games under their legs. So it's perfect. I think it's a situation we never really had. Well, I can speak for that in the last couple of years for this country that now we finally do. So I think that's what's very exciting. And that's also credit to, John being in constant communication with the club teams in the MLS. And also I know he's speaking to the guys in Europe as well. So it just helps everyone confidence-wise.
Richie, bring me into the mind of yourself when you're this young, full of talent, hopeful, being signed by Orlando City. You set your goals and dreams, but it's a tough time. There's ups and downs. It took a while for you to break in. Did you kind of go through difficult times throughout that period of like, man, I got to readjust my dreams and goals because, things aren't going well for me. But then you get the move to Toronto and you literally take off and now you're a star. And then do you readjust, reestablish those goals and dreams, or did you always keep them there? You just figured I just gotta, go through these ups and downs, power through it, stay positive, and I'll eventually get there. Did you always know what your potential was, or can you walk us through some of those things that were going on in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, the time in Orlando was extremely tough for me, but I think one thing I did well was not to lower my goals. I wanted to definitely at times, and I definitely thought about it, but I had a very good backbone within my mom and dad that kept me very accountable, and they didn't let me do that. At times I was like, oh, maybe, this isn't for me. I'm not good enough, especially with how things went for me in college. I felt like they went well. So I thought coming into the pros would be not a seamless transition, but, probably a lot easier. But then I come in, doesn't matter. You get drafted as high as you want to. That doesn't matter to these pro teams, right? You get thrown in with the Lions, and you're playing now across from Ballon d'Or winners, guys that have played in World Cups, guys that are playing in Champions League. So it's a different ball game, and I think mentally, 2016 was such a hard year for me. Terrible year. And I think I honestly needed that. Some days I look back at it now and it makes me so much more grateful for what I'm doing now. And, I don't take anything for granted. Every single time I step on the field, I know I'm like, I have to give it everything, because I'm not, I've said this in the past to friends. I told myself and my family I'd never put them in that situation again that I was in come 2018 when I had no club. So, and that was a very hard time, and I can only imagine how annoying and all the other words you can think of I was towards, my wife, my parents, brother, sister, best friends, probably just complaining every step of the way. So, I had a good backbone, so I didn't ever really lose sight of my goals, even though at times I won't lie, within my 3 years of Orlando, it didn't seem like I'd be able to do some of the things I set myself out there to do, which was definitely a tough pill to swallow at the time. But I'm very glad I kept with it and, persevered and pushed through it, because I think it makes it that much more exciting for me whenever I do something and I don't take it lightly. And I make sure, like I said, every time I step on the field, it's there's a purpose and there's a reason why I'm on the field.
So you mentioned those goals. What are they? Because I don't know if you've heard, but Atiba, besides just playing, does a little work off the field as well. Helps Besiktas find a little talent. There's been some rumors out there. Are your goals to play in Europe one day? And have you thought about that? Have you talked to anyone?
Yes. My goal is definitely to get to Europe. That's what I dreamed of as a kid, playing with my brother and my dad in the back here. You're screaming out Champions League final goals, World Cup goals. So those are goals I had as a kid that I'm not giving up on. I want to play at the highest level possible in the best competitions possible. So that's still not out of mind for me. And I'm definitely set on trying to do something like that. Will it happen? Time will tell. And that also depends, I think, mostly on me and my performances. And then the other bit I'll leave up to whoever else has to sort that out for me or whatever that might be. But I'm just fully focused right now in the now and doing well. And once you're doing well, it opens up a lot of different things. So hopefully I can reach those goals that I want to, like Europe and whatever else it might be. But I think most important and what I've learned through this entire process, that thinking that far doesn't do anyone any good. So I'm just focused on training tomorrow, actually, and I'll take it from there.
I know you'll get there. So just keep doing what you're doing. You mentioned it briefly. Passing the ball to a Ballon d'Or winner. You played with Kaká. Your first ever appearance in Major League Soccer, you subbed on for Kaká. What was it like with him in the locker room, with him on the training field? What did you absorb from him? What did you learn? And how was he with you personally?
Yeah, he was it's crazy to even think about it, because when I had first signed, I'd come a little bit late because I had visa issues, and I walk into the locker room, my head's down, and I'm looking at my phone, and the locker room's empty, or so I thought. And I look up, and there he is, and my locker and his locker are right next to each other. So I didn't even know what to say once I saw him. So that was like a surreal feeling for me, because this is a guy that I've even showed him in the past that I have a poster of this guy in my room, and I walk into a locker room and there he is. So that was a very surreal feeling for me, but just a top guy. You wouldn't if you didn't know who he was or what his name was, you would never even imagine what this guy's done. You know, he's just such a humble guy, grounded, super, super quiet, nice guy. So I had a very good relationship with him, and I played the same positions at the time as him, where I was being used as sometimes a 10, an 8, or a winger. So I was directly involved with him, and he did do actually a very good job of taking me under his wing. And he also helped me mentally to, you know, push through some things, because when you have a guy of that stature and the things he's won and done, you have no choice but to listen to him. So I definitely learned a lot from him. He was always one of the first guys in at the facility, one of the last out. He would be doing a workout before we'd even go out to the field with his personal guy, and he'd be, you know, sweating buckets, and I'd be walking in from just eating breakfast. And I was like, I mean, I must be doing something wrong if this guy at the age of 33, 34 is still working this hard, you know? So it was nice to see that professionalism out of him. And I mean, like, let's be honest, with what he'd done in his career, he could have came to this league and been a passenger and, you know, done whatever he had to do to make his money for say or whatever and leave. But I think it was a complete opposite with him, and he showed up every day, and he was very passionate about the club and the sport. So that was also eye-opening and nice for me to see that a guy like that, that's literally won everything, is still so motivated to continue to play, improve, and just show his passion for the game as well.
So, Richie, we could talk to you all day. We appreciate you giving us the time. It's been awesome. We got to ask you before you let you go, though, 2026, you know, US, Canada, Mexico, we're hosting. Canada's got a lot of excitement. And as you mentioned, all this young group coming through and what John Herdman's done. Are you thinking about it as a group? Are you talking about what the long-term goals of this program are and what you want to put down for the Canadian men's national team?
Yeah, that's a good one. We've definitely, I think everyone in the group knows what's at stake and what is there waiting for us, which is, you know, excited for our country and this group, because I think we have a very good group. But we did, I think, say collectively that, like I said to you guys, the now is way more important for us than thinking ahead to 2026. Yes, that's exciting. We have a very exciting young group of players that are, I think, going to contribute in a very big way and be very good for this country. And I think take this country to places it's never been before. So that part, I'm very hopeful, optimistic, and I think we have the group, the talent, and then the leadership as well to do it. But yeah, I think collectively we're not even thinking that far. There's a World Cup that's coming up before that we need to qualify for, and we need to show ourselves and everyone else, but more important ourselves, that we're capable of doing something like this. So I think everyone is so focused on right now and what we need to do, and we're thinking about June. June's what we're thinking about in those games that we need to play, and then get by those, and then we look at what's next. So yes, so to answer your question, where it's more we're thinking about the now, but definitely I'd be crazy to say that guys aren't thinking about that and what it's going to do for our country in 2026.
My last question to you: are you right-footed or left-footed? That's because I'm watching you play, and you'll use 50% left foot, 50% right foot. You can go right, you can go left.
Don't give away your secret, Reggie. Don't give away your secret.
Naturally, which foot are you?
I'm right-footed.
There it is.
Okay.
The phenom attacking right back for Toronto FC
Yes.
and the Canadian men's national team, the inaugural Canadian men's national team member on Club and Country. Reggie, we're rooting for you. We're excited. You mentioned June 5th. That's when Canada gets back on the field. World Cup qualifying, and of course, Toronto in CCL and MLS action as well. Thanks so much for taking the time, and good luck.
Thank you, guys.
All right, big thanks to Richie for joining the show. Matt Doyle rolls in for the last part here, focused on Canada. It's a classic
World Cup qualifying cycle where it's like we got to rotate the squad as we go through the game. Start Charlie, Taylor comes in, Richie with the huge performance.
Exactly.
And Doyle in for the last 15 minutes of the final game, just to waste time, right? Just lay it on the ball, take it to the corner.
I like to think that I'm for this group what Ilsinho's been for the Union. You know, I'm the late game super sub. I'm going to change things up for us a little bit here.
Okay.
I think that feels about right. We're talking Canada here. We're going to the best 11 as you see it, Dave, or as John Herdman sees it.
John Herdman sees it. If it was me, it would be 6 Mark Anthony Kays, who would be captain, and 5 Jonathan Osarios.
How do you
I
choose
just want
among
that
the
to be
6,
established.
though? Like, how do you choose the captain among the 6 Mark Anthony Kays?
It's total football. Everyone plays everywhere.
Okay,
Nothing
gotcha.
matters.
Gotcha. Well, Canada had a nice start to the first round of World Cup qualifying. 5-1 win against Bermuda, and then they beat Cayman Islands 11-0. They need to win Group B to keep it rolling for them to advance to that second round. A couple big games coming up for them in June. They've got Aruba, and then they have Suriname to finish it off. Suriname is the big one. Right now, Suriname is second in the group, also on 6 points. So they got to handle business against Aruba. That is the expectation here. Aruba has the -11 goal differential over 2 games so far, and then take down Suriname, who have 2 wins and 2, of course. All right. Take us through that 11, man. There's a lot of options here. If you're a U.S. national team fan, there's going to be points at which you are jealous, straight up, where you're like, I wish we had that guy. Maybe that guy was even born in New York City. Who knows?
And if you're a Canada fan right now, it's like, how can you leave X guy out? And it's like, well, that's the reality of depth, which is awesome. So I have a 5-3-2 with a few different movements of the way it goes. I think when you look at goalkeeper, it's exciting for Canada. You've got Dane St. Clair. You've got Maxime Crépeau, who have both been good so far over the last few months. But I think Milan Borjan still keeps that spot. He's been Herdman's starter in every big game. He had 1 spill against Bermuda. Otherwise, he's been solid.
He has 1 big spill a game.
I know. I said it in the Bermuda game. I was like, I still don't want him to be the starter. But Herdman has established, I think, that he is. And so unless there's a reason someone knocks him out, and I think that'll be Gold Cup, right? That's where a St. Clair or a Crépeau gets a full run of starts, and then you could say, yeah, fine, this is going forward. But against Suriname on June 8th or June 5th or 6th, whatever it is, it seems hard for him to pull out the guy who's been the backstop over the last few years. So in the back 5, I've got Daniil Henry as the center back. And while I don't watch a ton of the Korean League, I still think he's the best center back in the pool for this team. And I think he's the best organizer in the pool. I've got Steven Vittoria as the right center back, and I've got Kamal Miller as the left center back. Vittoria got the 2 starts in the last window, and it felt like that was John Herdman's safety blanket, is I believe what I get in him. I'm not a fan of Vittoria's game. I think he's slow. I think he also makes mistakes. But you could tell from that Bermuda game that John Herdman wanted his experience in that back line. And I have Kamal Miller in here because I think he's been great to start for Montreal. But also the key to this whole lineup in this last window and what it looks like it's going to be is an Alphonso Davies playing left back / number 10. And his left wing back position is you have complete freedom to go wherever you want and find the game. And so you need a left center back who can step out and defend 1v1 in transition when you lose the ball and who's comfortable stepping into that left back spot. It was Sam Adekugbe against Bermuda, and he did it pretty well, and he's been starting over in Europe. And so I think he's pretty high up in this depth chart, but it fits perfectly for Kamal Miller, where it's his natural position. I think he understands how to read Davies' game, and he can, for moments, I don't want it for a full game like he had to in Orlando, play along that sideline and defend players there. And then on the right side, if you had to win a game tomorrow, I'm glad we did this after the interview, I think it's Zachary Broguillard for 2-way defensive play as a right wing back. Can give you a lot in the attack, but Richie Laryea is not a defender yet, and he gets beat in big moments. He did it against Leon. It happened to him a few times in big games. And so I think Broguillard, good in Olympic qualifying, has been good going forward his whole career. It's been questions defensively. He's still higher right now than Richie Laryea is there.
Some doubt on your face there, Doyle.
I thought I was a big Zachary Broguillard guy, but he's very good. I would have him below both Richie Laryea and Tejan Buchanan as a right wing back. And we're talking about we're talking about against Suriname, right? We're talking about in the near future in a must-win game. You're going to start Tejan Buchanan at right wing back. Yes. Yeah, I would do that.
Interesting.
I would do that ahead of Zachary. And I like Zachary Broguillard. I like Alistair Johnston too.
Yeah, they have great options.
They have great options at right wing back. They might want to see if they could arrange a trade for another center back somewhere.
Yeah,
That's what I was going to say. That's clearly the weak link.
Yeah,
for Canada.
the best thing that could happen for Canada is Derek Cornelius for the Whitecaps, or like Callum Montgomery for Minnesota United,
or Joel Waterman.
I think he's a little lower on the totem pole just in terms of potential than those first two guys. Like they need a center back to step up. I thought we might have seen some of that in Olympic qualifying with Donald Norman. Or David Norman. Donald Norman's a Twitter guy. Playing, and he's been a big oversized sort of central midfield his career, and then they played him at center back, and I thought there was some potential there. The other player I'll mention, is left wing back. With the way Christian Gutierrez is playing for the Whitecaps, it becomes easier to rest Alphonso Davies. Obviously, Gutierrez is nowhere near the player that Davies is, but just having that type of backup there for that position, for your best player, maybe the best player in the entire region, that is some huge news for John Herdman, and just potentially allows him to get rest for a guy who's going to need it if they get through this round, which they will, and then go into World Cup qualifying proper.
If I never saw Marcus Godinho play a soccer game again in my life, I'd be okay with that. Okay.
Yeah, okay with that.
So they definitely appreciate that. So then this is the 3-man midfield. And what you saw in the last window, and I think makes a decent amount of sense right now, is you had Atiba Hutchinson and Steven Eustáquio in the central midfield. Atiba is the legend for this group. There isn't a ton of guys who can play two ways like him. I think he's still the starter in a big moment going forward, as you saw against Bermuda. They literally flew him in just for the one game, begged Besiktas, and then sent him back. And Eustáquio has been one of the best passers in Portugal over the last few months. Over the course of the season, it sounds like a move to Porto or Benfica, one of the big teams, is coming up for him. And you can tell from the way he was used by Herdman in the last window that he likes that idea and that ability to be able to have those two to play through and not really have to use the center backs as much to play out of the back, to allow those two to drop in. Then my third piece right now is Junior Hollett, who was a surprise as the starter in the last game because he hasn't been playing a ton for his club. But if you have Alphonso Davies covering your left side, and Kyle Laryea, who's my other starter now at center forward, alongside Jonathan David, who fills that space as well, I almost want that third central midfielder to float wide right and to bring space there and to be dangerous. So I think Scott Arfield's in the conversation there. David Wotherspoon's in there as well. Was not super impressed by him, but it's the Cayman Islands, so who the hell knows? But I think when you look at the way Hollett played in the last two games, stepped up for Canada, had big moments, was able to score himself, but was able to pull defenses around and make life easier for the players around him. I think there's a chance that he could maintain that spot for the next window. And then your two up top are obviously Jonathan David and Kyle Laryea. Laryea was so perfect to play with Davies on the left side, where he's played left wing for Besiktas this year. He's played center forward, so he can swap in and out of that space. And when Davies went high on build-outs and sort of picked up the half space, Laryea read it perfectly and was ready to either be an option for a 1-2 to send him through, or was ready to go and be sent through by Alphonso Davies. And Jonathan David's untouchable right now, as he should be. He's scoring for Lille. He plays in a 2-forward setup there. He looks super comfortable. He plays with different types of forwards. Ikone and Yilmaz give him two different looks, and he looks comfortable off both of them. But I think he's been at his best with Yilmaz, who's a little bit more of a physical presence. And so I think I think that's the ideal front two right now for Canada.
How much would teams like the U.S. and Mexico fear this team should they get through the first round of qualifying? Should they be in a position to ruin dreams, so to speak? And in the Gold Cup, obviously.
I mean, Canada thumped the U.S. 2-0 a year and a half ago.
I know.
And that was not an accident. They were a much better team on the day. Now, it looked very different than the lineup that David put out, but there's a lot of talent in this group. Jonathan Osorio is not a starter, as per you. Mark Anthony Kaye is not a starter, as per you. Lucas Cavallini is not a starter. Those guys are really good. Those guys are game changers off the bench if we're looking at this team. I think there would be look, man, nobody better be sleeping on Canada. At the same time, you would look at that team and say, we're going to get on the board. We can put the ball in the net against this side. So that puts Herdman in a spot. He's got to figure out what type of game he wants to get into. And I thought in the first Nations League game against the U.S., he got it right. Just by really jumping the U.S. midfield, kind of overloading Michael Bradley and was it Will Trapp? I don't even remember who it was. It was Weston McKennie. It was Michael Bradley and Weston McKennie, and just like kind of outplaying them and outnumbering them in central midfield. In the second game, the U.S. like Paul Arriola tormented Alphonso Davies, and Jordan Morris just dominated that entire right side of the Canadian defense. John Herdman has something to figure out here with playing to the strengths of this team while minimizing what I think are some pretty obvious weaknesses.
And that's where it's like the conversation between Eustáquio and Samuel Piette is, what type of soccer game are you going to play? Yeah. They're two players who are polar opposite in what they do well and where they're comfortable. It's good to have the depth and the options, but as Doyle said, the balance is going to be what's really interesting with all these pieces, and the balance in like what I'm talking about with Junior Hollett, which is you're not playing every week with your club. Other guys are, but do they give you what Herdman wants and how he figures it out? I think what's huge for them is I don't think we're going to see the best 11s every game over the next year and a half for most national teams in CONCACAF. Like they couldn't get Jonathan David out of France. But they have Cavallini now. They have Laryea. You have other pieces that you can pull in to have enough depth to at least get results and then bring your best pieces in. Like this is a team, I think, that, as you asked, could compete in Gold Cup. And I don't know if it'll be their best 23 coming to that tournament completely. And I think they still have enough depth to be competitive.
I think the change, now that I think about it a little bit more, would be in central midfield. Like I know Hoylett has meant a lot to that program, but like if you have two true forwards and Davies as a left wing back and Laryea or Buchanan or Broguiard as a right wing back, I don't think you play with another attacker in central midfield. I think getting Mark Anthony Kaye in there, along with Eustáquio and Atiba or Osorio, who's a much more of a two-way player than he used to be, that kind of makes more sense. And it also allows you to move Eustáquio back, almost use him as like a regista, which you don't see a lot of in a 3-5-2. And then you have two real two-way players in front of him. Gives you a little more steel up the spine, makes it a little harder to play right up the middle against Canada. While at the same time, like it's Atiba and it's Mark Anthony Kaye. They can move the ball. They can pick those passes and release runners. And when you have guys like Davies, Laryea, Jonathan David, and I'll say Richie Laryea, you want them to be able to attack space. So I think that's the big change I would make from what you laid out.
We'll see what happens in June. John Herdman, big decisions to make. These are big games. May not be against teams that you recognize all the names on the team sheet, but for Canada to get to that third round, they've got to get through the first round. They've got to win a home and away in the second round against another group winner in the first round, and then they, along with three other teams, will be into that third round where the U.S., Honduras, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Jamaica are already waiting.
And I just wanted to add what Doyle and me were talking about of figuring out what your game model is. Suriname, and if it were to go well, probably Haiti, are two nations where I don't know if Canada's the aggressor. And so that's like going to be really tough for Herdman to decide. Suriname's just a pure unknown. It's a lot of players who are dual nationals who have come in for the first time. They'll have played 3 games at the most together before Canada goes into it. And then Haiti as well are a bit of a question mark where I don't know if Canada's the pure aggressor in those games. I don't know if they sit back and try and hit in transition. And so it's going to be a huge test for Herdman to just establish who they are from a personality point of view for these 2 games.
And then it may have to change when you hit the third round as well. Yeah. And then the Gold Cup too. It's a big year for Canada. It's a big year for everybody in CONCACAF. Nations League, Gold Cup, World Cup qualifying, a lot to keep track of. We'll be back every month to do Club and Country. Next month's going to be that Gold Cup preview, so stay tuned for that. Before we get out of here, let's get a mailbag in, 401-206-0MLS, extra time at MLSsoccer.com. Anything good in there, Dave, that maybe we missed, should have talked about, or just caught your eye?
No, a ton of stuff, but here's 2 that I can combine. Roberto Manzo says, is there anyone in MLS right now that wasn't in camp? I assume he's talking about the U.S. recently that should be called up to the national team. And I was going to follow this up with Jack Bogle. This one's for you, Doyle, who says, why does Sands keep getting snubbed for the U.S. national team. Would that be your first guy?
That would be the first guy, but also like we've seen him through 2 weeks show the reason he keeps getting snubbed. Like he hasn't hit a meaningful pass yet this year. And I thought, especially this past weekend against FC Cincinnati, he was really sloppy and really timid with his distribution. And I just like it has to happen for him this year. He is in his third year as pretty much a starter, and I know there's going to be development later in his career in various aspects. But like, if he is going to factor at all into Greg Berhalter's plans for this World Cup cycle, he has got to start hitting those passes, and he has got to start being cleaner on the ball and just way less passive. Other than James Sands, I mean, so early in the season, it's very tough to say, unless we can cap Chicharito, in which case put Chicharito in there.
I mean, I would have said Sam Vines, but he's already been with the first team, and he hasn't really played for the Rapids yet. But he feels like sort of the most obvious, like gets the call up to be more of a permanent piece, given the way Greg seems to feel about him.
I mean, he started like 4 of the last 6 games, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's been there.
Yeah. Let me close you out on this one. Where do you think we see Matthew Hoppe in about 4 months?
Ooh. Not Schalke?
Yeah? You think no way?
I don't know, man. It feels like a pretty scarring situation to be in right now. I guess he did just sign a contract. And if Schalke want to go right back up, they saw what he could do in the Bundesliga. Maybe he does it in the 2 Bundesliga. And if they're saying to him, we're going to give you the minutes, you're going to get the opportunity, you stay. It's a weird situation because he just is like it's like a comet. All of a sudden, it's like flaming and going across the sky, and you weren't really aware of it before, and it just kind of jumped up on you. Well, what do you do now? Do you try to ride the wave at Schalke, where it's extremely... I mean, look, their fans are doing what they did. Everybody knows that story. And the club seems to be in real disarray, but also maybe going to have some change in leadership that pushes it into a different direction, or at least cohesion. I don't know. These are the decisions that are, as we talked about with Charlie and Daryl Dike, like these can change your career. There's a lot to weigh. Like I'm intimidated by it, and I have no personal skin in the game. I can't imagine what it's like for the kid.
Daryl's not counting for anything.
No, I mean, a big part of me hopes that he just has a year or even 2 in the second Bundesliga and tears it up and leads Schalke back to the Bundesliga. He's 19, 20 years old. Yeah. And he has a lot of talent, but he's not like a world beater. Let's get out of the limelight a little bit, but get into a really pressure-packed situation, which is what every game would be for Schalke in the second Bundesliga, and show what you could do at that level and develop your game and be the type of player who thrives in pressure. Like that is, to me, the ideal path for Matthew Hoppe. And then the next time we really think about him, maybe the 2024 Olympics. He's still young enough for that, but I don't expect Matthew Hoppe to play a significant role with the U.S. this cycle.
Yeah, it kind of feels like staying somewhere where people know and believe in you and have something riding on your success at that age with what he's done so far. And like I said, the Comet sort of scenario, stick with that.
And it's Schalke.
They're still
Schalke's
big.
Still a big club.
Yeah.
They've had a miserable decade because of terrible management. Well, they have new management now, and they're going to try to take their medicine, but then lead into a new era. He has a chance to be, a significant player in Schalke's history if he can do in the second Bundesliga what we all hope.
And there's also credibility in that new management and their track record believing in you.
Yeah.
For perhaps that next move. So we'll see. I would not have wanted to be Matthew Hoppe at the end of that season, though, man. I hope he's doing well right now personally. Good breakout for him. Anything else? We out of here?
No, I think Anders is cutting our time. So
all right, chuck up.
We have a million things we could do, but I don't think we have time to predict every single octagonal matchup.
You weren't. How about this? You weren't here, Doyle. Where's Daryl Dike going to be in 4 months?
Everton.
All right. On the record. That's it for us. 401-206-0MLS. Extra time at MLSsoccer.com. Anything you want to talk about for the international game. We'll be back for Club and Country, driven by Continental Tire. Next month, of course, Monday and Thursday is the normal show, breaking down everything happening in MLS. And as it happens, things in the international game, too. Subscribe to the podcast. Check us out on YouTube. In the meantime, that's a bonus pod for you this week. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on Thursday.